how can you build a strong country on the basis of the poor people? No way. So I say you must think of making the people rich in order to have a strong country. Vietnam today is friendly to all and enemy to none, not like before. And I very strongly believe that in the next 50 years, Vietnam will be a major player, not only in Asia, but in the whole world.
Bác Thanh, you are 94 years old. I truly appreciate you make all the way from District 7 to here just to talk to us today. For those who don't know you, how would you introduce yourself?
Well, great pleasure meeting you and talking to you today. And first of all, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Best wishes to you and to all our friends around the world. Very simple. I was born in Quảng Nam province, in the countryside.
Yes.
My grandfather on my father's side was a farmer. My ancestor came from Nghệ An province in the 17th or 16th century to Quảng Nam. And I'm the 18th generation of the Bùi family in Quảng Nam. My grandfather side on my mother's side was a Mandarin at the court of Wei. My father was a student when he got married at 18. My mother was only 15 and I was born when my mother was 16.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And my father followed his study in Hanoi first, and then he went to France for medical study. He did not return until 1941. So all those time, first I stayed on my mother's side, and at the age of 6 or 7, I moved up to my grandfather on my father's side. Yeah. So my childhood was practically in the villages, playing with the buffalo boy most of the time, but very comfortable. I feel very at ease. As a matter of fact, I don't know why, but even though I was on the villages, the countryside, I feel I was just there temporarily and my destiny was not in the village. And when I see the sunrise or the sunset, my eyes just burst out to the sky and wonder where I come from and where I'm going. So that was when my childhood. And when my father came back from France in 1941, I followed my father in his enterprises. First, he had a laboratory, pharmaceutical laboratory in Kien province. And then his associate did not want to be associated with the Oriental medicine. So he dropped that and organized his own Oriental medical laboratory and changed the name to Nhà thuốc Bác sĩ Tín. You see, even though he was trained in France, he did not really try to be a French doctor. He studied how the health situation in Vietnam had to be developed and how to help the 25 or 26 million people in Vietnam then who did not have the means to buy product from the pharmacy. So he started his Nhà thuốc Bác sĩ Tín with Oriental medicine, beginning with thuốc ho Bác sĩ Tín, and the most famous one is Quân nhịp Bác sĩ Tín, to care for the villagers and for the more not privileged people. And by 1975, Nhà thuốc Bác sĩ Tín became a very well known and covered the whole country. I learned that in 1975, out of 20 million people in South Vietnam, nhà thuốc bác sĩ Tính sold more than 20 million bottles
Oh, wow. Okay.
of
More than the
eucalyptus oil when dịp bác sĩ Tính.
I see.
So that was my story. And then during the year from 1941 until 45, I did not study very much. I was sent to Institut de Providence, a Catholic school in Hue.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the war situation, I get back to Quy Nhơn and then to Saigon. And I did not study anymore from lớp 5, lớp 6, that was
Yeah.
5th, 6th grade.
Yes.
But later I realized at the age of 15, I must do my best to pass the baccalaureate, in time to attend universities. And from 47 to 49, in 2 years, I had the privilege of having a private teacher who came to my house. Actually, my mother rented a whole villa for him to stay in Fulham district now. And I went there to study every day for 2 years to complete the 6th year of secondary study.
In 2 years.
From grade 6 to grade 12. Mm-hmm. But then I did not have the livre scolaire. I mean the school booklet to apply for examination in Saigon. So I asked my mother to permit me to go to France to pass the exam, what they call the baccalaureate, the 12th grade exam in France. It took me some time to study French because in Saigon we did not study French. But in 3-4 months I studied French classic in order to pass the first baccalaureate in France, which I did with the help of another uncle who came back from Berlin where he taught French to German school to help me learn French in order to pass the baccalaureate exam in France. And after that, I registered in a lycée, normal French lycée Fontainebleau, outskirts of Paris, for the baccalaureate number 2. And after 1 year, I passed the exam and I applied for university study in Paris. In the middle of my preparation to what they call Grande École in France, because in Paris there are 6 main schools called the Grande École, beginning with Polytechnique, École Centrale, École des Mines, École des Ponts et Chaussées, etc. So you have to be prepared for competitive exam to be admitted to those schools. I intended to study aeronautic and space science at that time already. But my father said that that line of study may not be very helpful to Vietnam. So he obtained a scholarship for me to go to the United States to study economics. So I abandoned my preparation for Grande École in France to go to the United States. And in order to do that, I have to study English. So from January to September 1951, I studied English in London. Okay. And then I moved to the United States in September 51 to join university in the US. That is part of my life as student. So I leave you with the next question.
Yeah, fantastic. Would love to just continue there. How, which university did you join? Where did you stay? How was your time in the US?
Yes, the first year in the United States, my father got a scholarship for me to study in a Catholic school called St. John University in Collectorville, Minnesota, a very reputed school run by the Benedictine father. And I stayed 1 year there, and I learned a lot, not only economic, not only cultural, but a lot about religion, because I was admitted into a priesthood student class with emphasis on economics. But after 1 year study in St. John, I found that economics is not really in the Minnesota state, but somewhere else. So I applied for Columbia University in New York City, where I think is the best school for economics and management. You know, in the United States, the famous university for that, beginning with Columbia, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Cornell. But Harvard is very famous for management. But Columbia is special because in New York City, and the student body is very special. Most of them come from very big family. In the United States, you have at least 2 classes of leadership, the manager and the owner. Harvard is manager, but Columbia are owner. The kids who went to Columbia mostly come from families such as Rothschild, Rockefeller, Carnegie, so on. So I thought to myself, for something to Vietnam later on, it would be best for me to be with a student body among the top economic leader of the world. And that is at Columbia. That's why I registered in Columbia to study economics for 2 years. After my graduation in 1954, I wanted to follow up with the master degree in Columbia. But the event with that, during my study in Columbia, I met Ngô Đình Diệm, who was an exile in Maryknoll Sister Convent in New Jersey. And every weekend, Ngô Đình Diệm would come over to New York to visit a friend. And I was invited by my friend in New York to join conversation with Ngô Đình Diệm.
Just for context, quickly to confirm, this is the former Prime Minister of Southern Vietnam.
Ngô Đình Diệm later on became Prime Minister of Vietnam.
Later on,
And later on become President of Vietnam. So I have 2 years of conversation and very close association with Ngô Đình Diệm during those years. And when he became Prime Minister in July 54, he sent a message to ask me to come back to assist him. And I came back to Saigon with 5 other friends, students in the United States, to be myself personal assistant to the Prime Minister at that time. And for 2 years, I served as assistant to the Prime Minister during very trying time, from August 54 to the establishment of the Vietnam Republic in 55, and on to 56, when I was sent to work at the National Bank of Vietnam, because Vietnam gained monetary independence from France at the end of 54, and the French government turned over the Banque de l'Indochine to the Vietnam government. The Banque de l'Indochine was the issuing bank, the central bank of Indochina at that time. So I was sent with another group to take over the Banque de l'Indochine and to establish the Banque Nationale, the Vietnam National Bank of Vietnam, which was the central bank of South Vietnam at that time. I worked there for about a year, And then the president sent me to the United States again
Okay.
for study, for advanced study in bank management and financial matters. So I went back to the United States in 1956 under a program run by the United States AID, and I follow a training course covering all activity of a commercial bank at Chase Manhattan Bank, then all the steps for an investment bank at Merrill Lynch. And then every action and work at the central bank at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. I was practically the only person in Vietnam to be trained all the way from commercial bank, investment bank, and central bank under a U.S. program.
Was there a goal from the Prime Minister for you to receive that training?
When the Prime Minister sent me to work to the National Bank of Vietnam, which was the central bank, but Vietnam is not yet very developed in any banking matter, so we need to have more training. And that's why I was sent to New York for advanced training in bank management, from commercial bank to investment bank to central bank, so that I be enough experience to help develop the National Bank of Vietnam.
Yeah.
But then after I finished my study there, the government feel that relationship with the U.S. banking system must be more developed. So the president named me as representative of the National Bank of Vietnam in New York City to represent the banking authority for the Republic of Vietnam in New York. I was among maybe 40 or 50 central bank representatives in New York City at that time. At a very young age, I was 26.
Yeah.
Whereas my other colleagues are over 50. And in that capacity, I was responsible for overseeing the commercial program for American aid in Vietnam. You know, American aid at that time to Vietnam was called commercial economic aid, about $300 million. And the government issued licenses for importer to import medicine, automobile, or consumer goods from the U.S. to Vietnam. Import license issued to the importers, and American banks are designated as correspondent bank. So depending on each program, what they call the PA, procurement authorization, the central bank would send one PA to Chase Manhattan Bank, one PA to Citibank, one PA to Morgan Bank, so on. So I was named Central Bank of Vietnam representative in New York to oversee the execution of this program, to run it smoothly so that the importer would get their license executed and the bank would pay the exporter, and the importer would get their good, and the importer would pay what they call counterpart fund in Vietnamese dong to the Vietnam Bank, and the Vietnam Bank would pay that to the central bank, which would serve as the fund to run the government at that time. So I was made the representative of the Central Bank of Vietnam in New York for 2 years. After the system runs smoothly, I say, well, now there is no more need for a representative of the Central Bank of Vietnam in New York for that purpose. So the government sent me back to Saigon. And my job when I come back to Saigon was to organize what is called the Bank Examination Department. You know, the central bank must follow up activity of the commercial bank. And every now and then, the central bank would send out team to examine the activity and the books of the commercial bank. Such thing is very, very normal in any central bank activity, but the central bank in Vietnam did not have that. So the government and the central bank asked for Federal Reserve Bank of New York for assistance to create and build the bank examination department for the central bank in Vietnam. And I was sent back to work with the New York Federal Reserve Bank of Vietnam to set up the bank examination department for the central bank in Saigon. After that, I feel that my work with the government has been completed. In 1958, I asked the president to let me go private.
Private, okay.
So I said to the president, all my work as an expert for commercial bank or central bank now can be taken over by other official. I wish to be in the private sector.
Okay. What did you have in mind?
So the president hesitated very much, but then finally he acceded to my request and let me resign from the central bank to go into the private sector.
What was your personal reason to move to the private sector?
Well, very interesting. Sometimes the question was destiny. I left the central bank and then I was invited by the chairman of AIG International at that time.
Insurance, right? AIG.
To take over the management of AIU, American International Underwriters Insurance Company in Saigon. You see? And the international chairman at that time was C.V. Starr, Cornelius Starr. He's the founder of all the American International Insurance Group in Shanghai, and from Shanghai developed in China, and after 49 in the United States, and the system grew worldwide. When he came to Saigon to set up the AIU International Insurance Company there, very early in the 1930s, 31. And from 21 to 1954, the group grew into one of the first leading insurance group in Saigon. It was headed by a French manager.
Yeah.
But after 56, when Vietnam achieved complete independence, the group was looking for a Vietnamese manager to head the insurance business in Vietnam.
Yep.
And the chairman, Cornelius Starr, asked his president system in Hong Kong to look for someone in Vietnam. The situation is rather long, but anyway, they did a very, very long study to find the person to head their activity. And it happened that I just resigned from my position at the central bank, being trained in Columbia University, being trained in all sorts of banking in New York, being a representative of the central bank in New York City, so on. I suddenly become available.
Yeah, you speak French and English as well.
Yeah. And I was invited to be the chief executive officer of AIU, American International Underwriter Insurance Company at that time. So that is how I switched over from public service to private sector.
58, right?
That was in 59.
59, okay.
I became chairman, CEO of AIU, American International Underwriter Vietnam, in 59. And well, the group is very thorough. Even though I have very good experience elsewhere, but I did not have much experience in insurance.
Right.
So the chairman sent me to Hong Kong for executive training for 6 months.
More training.
I have to go to every sector of insurance in Hong Kong. You know, Hong Kong is the headquarters of American Internet Insurance for Southeast Asia. So I was in the system for Southeast Asia. So after 6 months training in Hong Kong, I came back to Saigon to take up my job as the head of American International Underwriter. And I served in that capacity until 1963.
Okay, 4 years.
Yeah, when the military overthrew President Ngô Đình Diệm and put me in jail for 16 months.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, but during that time, my activity is not limited to insurance and limited to American International Group. I organize other business, and one of the most important one is called Vietnam Automotive Battery Manufacturing Company, to manufacture battery, automotive battery. And my associate and partner came from the Philippines.
So wait, this is your own company as well?
Yeah, we organized the company in Vietnam. The 80% was owned by Vietnamese enterprise and ownership, and 20% by the Filipino group.
I see.
But they have good technology because they had set up already factory in the Philippines. And they serve a technical director for me. And we copy practically their factory design in the Philippines to set up the factory in Vietnam. And we signed licenses with American Battery Group. You know, the number one American battery group at that time actually have another name because the Prestolite. Then I signed the license with Prestolite to take over the technology from Prestolite to develop and build battery for Vietnam under license from Prestolite. We paid 3% license fee, but we have all the technology and the design for the factory. So the what they call VACO, Vietnam Automotive Battery Manufacturing Company product is exactly the same quality with Autolite or Prestolite in the United States. Autolite was number one, but it was sold to Ford. So we could not license with Autolite. We licensed with Prestolite. So Vietnam had the first joint venture agreement with the foreign investor through this VAPCO, Vietnam Automotive Battery Manufacturing Company. And the first really high-tech group to build and develop battery manufacturing in Vietnam. That was in the 1959 to 1963 when the factory was built.
What was your role in?
I was the chairman and chief executive officer of that too. And I invited the key leader of the automobile part in Vietnam to join. You know, Vietnam at that time had a very huge system for selling automobile parts. And I got in touch with the main leader of automobile part distribution and invite them to be shareholder of them. And through their systems, we sell battery to the civilian market. So right off the bat, I cover more than 80% of the civilian market through the distributor that are really the key player for Vietnam automotive part in Vietnam at that time. And when we do that, I think of the military market. And I had a good relationship with the military. And I invite one of the officers to be my market developer for the military market. And through that channel, VAPCO sell practically 70-80% to the military of Vietnam. Huge market.
Yeah.
But they're not enough, I think, of the American military market.
Mm.
Because military US use a lot of battery. And they are really not very careful about how they use it. So very wasteful. But anyway, big market.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent my military officer to talk with the US military side and told them that you import military battery from the US, it takes time to deliver, and why can we sell it to you right here? Go and visit our factory, you will see, check on our quality. It's the same quality as pressurized autolite in the US. So the military sent inspector to visit my factory, and after review, they approve the quality. And for that, we sell almost 50% of the military procurement for battery in Vietnam. So we cover all the three markets. The civilian market, the military market from the Vietnam side, the US military market. So the enterprise become, I think, the biggest enterprise in Vietnam in 75, as far as revenue is concerned.
Oh, wow, okay.
See, well, just we have to think of way of doing things. And with my experience working with the National Bank, my experience in New York City, my relationship while I served as a representative of the Central Bank of Vietnam in New York, I was invited to lunch by the Rockefeller family and so on. So I was really on the top of the social and financial world at that time, which allowed me the relationship to work very well in Vietnam when I left the government to get into the private sector.
Yeah, fantastic. That was 64. That all ended, right? You kind
It
of
was ended after 63
okay.
when the military overthrew the government, Ngô Đình Diệm, and I was put in jail.
Yeah, and you
for
were
about 15 months.
You were early 30s, mid 30s, I assume.
In 63, I was born in 1931, so 32 years.
32, yeah, still young, at the top of the pyramid, and then things change. Can you walk us through that experience?
But I was not accused of anything. It's just because I was very influential in Vietnam at that time, being a very close associate of President Ngô Đình Diệm, well known in the public, and the military was afraid that I may be a threat for them. So they just keep me in jail for 16 months like that to isolate me from the outside world so that I would not be a threat for their regime.
What was that like for you, that experience?
Well, it was interesting. For me, it was an opportunity rather than anything else. Because at the top of my career as a business person and as a personality in the political world in Saigon at that time, certainly I was put to some kind of Sabbath reflection time. And I'm very lucky that during that time, next to my cell, there was a person who recited Buddhism. And one of the somebody recited Bát Nhã Tâm Kinh. Maha Bát Nhã Ba La Mật Đa Tâm Kinh. So very, very influential to my mind at that time. And it hit me with something very special about Buddhism. So I asked my family to send to me books to read. Within 15 months in jail, I read a lot of books on Buddhism.
Okay.
And
quickly before that, were you Catholic?
I was in jail, and then I was relieved later on, and I went to France.
Okay.
From January 64 to January 65, February 65, I was in jail in Saigon at the police headquarters.
Yeah. Just quickly on religion. Yeah. You said you read about Buddhism, but before you went to Catholic schools. How did your faith change?
I learned a lot about the Bible. I learned a lot about the Catholic religion. But then I learned a lot about Buddhism during my months in jail. And not only Buddhism, because from Buddhism you got into all the study about the Taoism, Lão Tử, Đạo Đức Kính, and others. So it was 15 months, 16 months of very intense study about religion, about philosophy of Asia, the East, from Buddhism to other school of study.
You made the most of it.
Yeah. I think it was a very, very valuable time for me that shaped my thinking and my behavior a lot after that.
Did you have a process before going into jail, or did they just throw you?
My project in jail was to be in the business, develop insurance, develop industry.
I mean, was there a trial or a proper process for you that you were sentenced to jail?
Well, it was sudden. I didn't expect to be picked up and to sent to jail because I did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
But the military was afraid of me as being an influential person. And they don't want to run the risk of having me outside and organizing counter-revolution and so on.
Yeah.
They just put me in jail just to be safe.
Okay.
But that's okay. I just used my time to study what I am privileged to get in touch with to study. And it's very, very influential to my life later on.
And did you know it would be 15 months, or did you not know how long it would last?
No, we cannot know. There is no delay, there is no wrong, and no accusation, nothing. You know, and then again, military regime change. And at the last change, a person named Nguyễn Xuân Huấn, he's a graduate of Harvard University, become deputy prime minister. And a friend of mine served as his secretary. And my friend asked Mr. Huấn, the deputy prime minister, to release me from jail. And Nguyễn Xuân Huấn see no reason to keep me in jail. So the deputy prime minister asked Nguyễn Xuân Huấn sign the order to release me from jail, just like that.
Different times.
Yeah. And then it was practically at that time, I think it was 26, 27, in December, lunar year, I was released from jail, and my family wasn't informed. So when I get out of jail, I just call a taxi and get back to my house. And my wife was outside somewhere, so I had to wait at the gate for a few hours. That's that. It's very, very simple.
Well, but what happened then? I guess 94, 95, this is when things changed in Vietnam.
What happened after that was that even I was released from jail, but the military still not feel very easy. So they call me back sometime every 2 other weeks to report to the police department to make declarations so that they can keep an eye on me. After a few months like that, I feel very tired about getting to report to the police every 3 weeks practically. So I went into the pagoda in Chalern to rest in An Quang Pagoda. There again, I had the opportunity to learn more about Buddhism and more meeting the high priest there, who also helped me a lot to see more than what I learned in books. And I stayed there for a number of months. And then a jailmate came to visit me and say, "Hey, Thanh, you want to go with me to France?" Just like that. And I said, "Well, sure, why not?" So actually he had made arrangement with the Messagerie Maritime, which is the boat company that run the boat that go from Saigon to Marseille. You know, Ho Chi Minh was on one of those boats.
So with boat to Marseille all the way.
On Marseille all the way from Saigon. So how to do that? Because we have no visa, we have no passport, nothing. So we become clandestine passenger. Interesting. At the given date, Lộc, that's his name, Phạm Quang Lộc, his girlfriend and myself, we went to dinner on the boat because the boat anchor in Saigon Harbor, and every now and then they organize dinner aboard. So we went to dinner on the boat on that night, and after dinner we were hidden in the hull of the boat for the night. And the next day the boat just pulled anchor and sailed out.
Right.
Become a clandestine passenger that way from Saigon to Marseille. And
was it all on one boat to Marseille?
One boat, yes.
Like
21 days.
Like below Africa? Like how?
No, actually that is a regular boat system for France and Vietnam.
Okay.
Yeah. Passenger boat or merchandise boat going from Vietnam, Singapore, and then to Djibouti, to Port Said,
I see. Okay.
the Suez Canal, and Marseille.
And did
route, yes.
Did your wife join you? Did your family join you?
No, my wife did not come with me at that time. I went alone. And I organized for my wife to follow me a year later through other way. She went to clandestine to Cambodia, and from Cambodia she took an airline going to Italy, and from Italy we organized her to go to France. But that is easier than to be clandestine passenger on a merchandise boat. So I landed in France at that time, 1965, and 65 I worked in France for a number of years before I went to the United States and back to Vietnam.
What did you do in France?
Oh, in France first, I worked in, very interesting, in the collection and sale of antique.
Antique?
Yeah. I love antique, Chinese antique from dynasty, the Ming dynasty, the Han dynasty. A lot of culture in antique there. And I met a friend who is a dealer in antique, he's a Frenchman. So we worked together and set up a shop in Paris to sell antique for about 2 years. And after that, my wife joined me a year later, and she wanted to open a restaurant. So we opened a restaurant for her. It became a very famous restaurant in Paris called AIG Gourmet. And it was reported in the French press, in the Elle magazine, and so on. And with that restaurant, my wife can have an independent source of revenue, and the kids have place to eat without having to cook for them at home.
Yes.
After a few years, as an antique dealer in France, I went to south of France with one of my brother who just graduated architect in Paris. And the both of us went to the south of France for a visit, and we visited real estate development project in south of France. And the fate was that I met with a very big developer in the south of France with a lot of projects, but who run into financial difficulties, and most of his project was seized by the bank. So I went to talk with the bank. I negotiated with the bank to let me develop project that was seized. And I got agreement from the bank to take over those projects to continue development of those projects and pay back the bank from the revenue when I sell the land. So that is how I got into real estate development in south of France. One project after another, I took over from a failed project to make a successful project, so that the bank can get the money back, and also the enterprise that did the work, infrastructure work. You know, they build the road and they build the phone line, water line, and they were stuck in there. So I negotiated with them so that they continue their work. I will pay them when I sell the lot and then pay them back over time. So I did not have to invest a lot of money to buy the land or to do the infrastructure work. I work on agreement with the party involved, and that's how I developed real estate in France.
All right. And you went to the US next. Tell us about that.
Yeah, after that, when my daughter, my first daughter, graduated from School of Medicine in Paris. She was born in 1957 in New York City, while I was representative of the central bank. So she has American citizenship. And after she graduated from École de Medicine in Paris, I want her to do higher study in the US. So I went to the US with her to interview with a hospital in the US for her to do a residency program. So after the doctor degree, you do not go into practice right away. You get further training, and the US you begin with the residency, 3 years residency after doctor degree. And you become, for instance, a specialist in pediatrics, you know. And after 3 years, then you can really work at pediatrics with any hospital under contract. So I went to the US after 84 to register my daughter into residency program in Tulane University in Louisiana.
Okay.
After 3 years, then I registered her further to be fellowship in a university in Chicago. So she completed 5 years of after graduation in France to become a fellow in neonatology. You know, you become with pediatric, and neonatology was to take care of the newborn.
Okay.
And those very high training. Actually, my daughter completed 13 years of training to be a fellow and an associate professor in medicine.
This
That's
was
how
80.
I went back to the States to actually help follow up on that. And I went back to AIG again. I was invited by the chairman, the same one. But then a new chairman was voted in, invited me back to New York, and then sent me to Chicago to be the controller of AIG to see what went wrong in Chicago.
Which year was this?
The first controller ever. That was in 1984, 85. Okay,
yeah. Just quickly, I think a lot has happened in Vietnam during that time. You know, how much of that did you experience being away from Vietnam?
I didn't come back at all from 65 to 91. I was in France and then in the United States. But I followed situation in Vietnam through my relationship with the embassy in Paris. I was very friendly with the leadership of the Vietnam embassy, the Socialist Republic of Vietnam embassy in Paris. So I followed up what was going on in Vietnam. And then in 1980, 81, I received a delegation sent from Hanoi by Mr. Phạm Hùng to meet me in Paris and to ask me for counsel and advice on how to rebuild Vietnam economy, which was then fallen in ruin
Yes.
after 75. So that is my other story. I start by coming back to Vietnam and how.
Yeah, I think this is maybe the most important part, especially for the country. So, what was that process like to return and to help build the country?
Well, somehow the leadership in Hanoi learned about my experience and my life work.
Yeah.
So when the situation in Vietnam went very bad, the people in the south do not have enough right to eat. The whole economy went into ruin. They need to find a way out. And they may have got into contact with many people, but Mr. Phạm Hùng sent a delegation to meet me in Paris to ask for ideas on how to reconstruct the economy. The conversation was very friendly. I asked them, why do you come to see me? I'm not a communist. I am what you call a dirty capitalist. So they just laugh and say, well, we know all about you. From the time you work with the President Ngô Đình Diệm, your time in New York City and so on. As far as intelligence is concerned, we are pretty good. We know very much about you. So don't worry. So I say, okay, so what do we talk about? Well, they say the situation in Vietnam is very bad. I ask him, how bad? I say, very bad. So I say, well, why don't you change it? I said, sure, we want to change it. We don't know how. And that's why we are here. Maybe you can have some idea to success and how we can deal with the situation. So that's how the conversation starts, you see. And to sum it up, I say that your system is the dictatorship of the proletariat. Dictatorship of the proletariat. First dictatorship, proletariat is poor people. Okay? That is the basis of your policy. How can you build a strong country on the basis of a poor people? No way.
Yeah.
So they say, we know that. We have experienced that. So I say, well, to make it short, a strong country can only be built on a very prosperous people, rich people. I ask them to consider from Europe to Asia, from ancient time, Roma, to Tanchiwan in China. Where can you find a strong country built on the poor people? None. So I say you must think of making the people rich in order to have a strong country. So that hits right away on the question of policy and of ideology. You see? Oh, they say, Mr. Bùi, very difficult for me for us to come back to Hanoi to report what to say, making people rich. Because when we open our mouth to say make people rich, we will be thrown out of the party right away. You see? I say, well, I will write for you a paper, on a sheet of paper, from what we talk about. You go home and show that to your leaders. Don't talk. Because if you are afraid of being thrown out of the party because you make an oral report, don't make it. I will write down for you just one page of what we're talking about and show them to them the crux of it is people rich, country powerful. If your leadership agree with that, come back and talk to me. If they don't agree with that, I have nothing to talk to you about. So that's how it started. 4 months later, they came back and said, the leadership agree with your idea of making the people rich so that the country become powerful.
Oh.
A revolution.
Yes.
The dictatorship thrown out of the window practically. Proletariat no longer. So from there, we meet regularly 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 5 years of discussion so that we understand where we go. End up with the resolution of the 6th Congress, 1985, in which the language we study was actually voted, approved by the National Congress of the Communist Party in 1985. Very interesting if you know Vietnamese. It's very subtle but very strong to define what is the Vietnam economy from now on. What changed from dictatorship or the proletariat to something else? What they call the market economy.
Yes.
Yeah? So, for those who understand Vietnamese, this is interesting. Kinh tế Việt Nam là nền kinh tế nhiều thành phần, no longer a state-run economy. Nhiều thành phần a monopoly of the state. Nhiều thành phần is open for the whole people. No limit, nhiều. The word the nhiều is very, very important. It encompasses a liberty, a newfound liberty for doing business for the whole people. The whole people now are free to enterprise, are free to participate in economic activity. Kinh tế Việt Nam là nền kinh tế nhiều thành phần. And what else? When you have the product, right? Nhiều thành phần to make the product. But when you have the product, what you do? Before you have to distribute to state channel.
Yes.
And you would have a book of stamp to go to buy product from distribution center. Okay? No longer. We have to redefine the economy. Kinh tế Việt Nam là nền kinh tế nhiều thành phần, vận hành theo cơ chế thị trường, operating under the principle of market economy.
Yes.
Market economy, no longer monopoly of the state. That is now the huge revolution, abandoning all this theory in Marxist books. Kinh tế Việt Nam là nền kinh tế nhiều thành phần, vận hành theo cơ chế thị trường, operating under the principle of market economy. For what? So we have to come further. Vì cái gì? Vì cái gì? For what? Vì dân giàu nước mạnh. For the people being rich and the country being powerful.
Yes.
Vì dân giàu nước mạnh. Vì dân giàu một cái là no longer vô sản, no longer proletariat. People must get rich for the country to become powerful. Vì dân giàu nước mạnh. And what else? Dân giàu nước mạnh. What for? Dân giàu nước mạnh. Xã hội, the society. How will the society operate? Xã hội công bằng, equality. Dân chủ, democratic, văn minh, civilized. That is the final object of the whole change. So that we get a society which is free, which is democratic, which is equality for all, and to be civilized and not no longer imprisoned in any backward ideology. It means that Vietnam is open to the whole world, to learn from the whole world. What văn minh, civilization is about.
Yes.
You see, that is the resolution at the 6th Congress. In those words are a complete change of system. Now 30 years, now 86, now 26, 40 years. We make progress, but not yet everything that was voted in there. But we make good progress.
Yes.
And now what happened? Now recently there was a resolution by the Politburo called Resolution 68.
Right.
Resolution 68, what did it say? It said that the power of decision and dynamic of the economy belong to the people and to the enterprise. No longer the government.
Yeah.
The government no longer have any decision on how the economy would be run. So what the government do? In the same resolution it say the government, nhà nước không quản lý nữa, nhà nước phục vụ, hợp tác để phát triển. The state will no longer manage. The state will service, phục vụ. The state hợp tác, collaborate. The state help the enterprise to grow. No longer the state manage the economy. The people, the enterprise should take over the decision, the power on how to develop the economy. And the role of the state is to support the enterprise and to support private enterprise. 40 years we make some progress.
Yes.
And now it belongs to the younger generation to pick it up from there and to build Vietnam into really something. Now, we can talk about the future of Vietnam into something, but I'll let you ask more questions if you wish.
I'm just very fascinated by the storytelling, because many of my generation, we heard of Đổi Mới, the reform. Maybe we almost take it for granted, right? But if you really think through it, this was before our time, and how much of a ideological change it was. And I would be just very curious to understand a bit more, like what the process was like. The way you explained it, you wrote a one-pager, a letter, basically. This was submitted to the leadership back then, and then each subsequent year they met with you to discuss it, and then 85, 86 it happened, right? So you had a very instrumental influence on that. Like how difficult was it to make that change?
I'm very lucky because I'm trusted, and whatever I say is listened to, and whatever I say that is reasonable and good is adopted. You see, I'm very happy to be able to be part of the change and the evolution. You see, and now we are in a situation now. Where is Vietnam now, and where is Vietnam in the future? That's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Vietnam today is friendly to all and enemy to none. Not like before. Of the 193 members of the United Nations, not one single country is against Vietnam. The last time there was a vote, Vietnam get 193 out of 193 vote. Interesting, right? Vietnam today have free trade agreement with 60 countries in the world. When we say 60 countries, we do not see yet the importance of it, but 60 free trade agreement with 90% of the world GDP. That is how Vietnam today. Vietnam has comprehensive agreement with 14 major countries in the world. The first time in history any country get a comprehensive cooperation agreement with all the 5 members of the Security Council. China, United States, France, England, and Russia. That is how Vietnam today. And Vietnam, where is it today? Vietnam today is the center of what is now known as the Indo-Pacific Economic Area. What is it? It comprises Japan, Korea, China, the ASEAN country, Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, Indo-Pacific Economic Area. That represents 62% of the world population. That represents 60% of the world GDP and growing. Larger than the US, Europe, Russia, and all the continents combined. And growing at the rate of 5% in China, 8% in Vietnam. whereas the US is growing by 2% and Europe by 1% and so on. So not only this is the largest economic area today, but growing at a very fast pace. And where is Vietnam? Why is Vietnam the center? 2 hours flight, we cover the whole ASEAN country. 5-hour flight from Vietnam, we cover from Japan to India. That is how Vietnam is the center geographically.
Yeah.
And because Vietnam is friendly to all and enemy to none, it is a friend-shoring country for all investors around the world. They no longer invest massively in China. Where do they go? They have to find a place. Where's the place? Maybe in Japan, maybe in India, but the center is still Vietnam.
Yes.
And what does Vietnam have? Geographically, more than 50% of world maritime trade go by Vietnam shore on the Pacific Ocean. All the freight from Europe would go to Singapore and then going up north by the coast of Vietnam before they reach Hong Kong or Japan. And the north-south maritime route, as well as the east-west maritime route, is close to the shore of Vietnam by 100 to 200 nautic miles. You see? And how Vietnam becomes the center of the world maritime traffic. Besides from the air transport traffic, as we say, 5 hours for the whole Indo-Pacific economic area. So by the geographic position and by the diplomatic relation with the whole world, Vietnam is the center of development for the Indo-Pacific area and for the whole world. What does Vietnam have? Not only does Vietnam have good, trained people within the country, but we know Vietnam has something like 5 million diaspora around the world.
Yeah.
And maybe 1 million experts in all fields around the world. IT, economic, whatever you can call it. Only in the world, only 3 countries have such privilege. Number 1 is China. The number of Chinese around the world, right?
Yes.
Number 2 is Israel. 10 million Jews around the world. Vietnam, 5 million.
Yes.
Maybe we did not count India yet, but very strong diaspora in Vietnam. The situation is correct. The country is open. The future is inviting. I believe that Vietnam will be a very good place for all the diaspora to come back and prosper. Prosper for the home country and prosper for them. Where do they go to go? You go to Silicon Valley? Yeah. We are building a Silicon Valley city in Vietnam today.
Yeah. Silicon Highlands.
Silicon Highlands. You have heard about that. It will be an integrated city with development of IT, AI. It will be a city for education where we invite the leading university in the world to come, and a city for health.
Yeah.
What we call the blue zone. In the world, there are 5 blue zones for help people to live well and to live long life. That is what Vietnam can offer. 5, 10 years, 50 years, 100 years down the road.
Yeah.
You see, Vietnam will be one of the leading countries in the world. From what we see, the opportunity is there, the policy is there. Now we need people to put hands together, to work together. And I see that the governing authority are very open and welcoming. Now it belongs to all of us to get together to execute what the Resolution 68 says.
Yes.
We are the master of the country, and the government is to support us, who have to make they do their work by contributing to develop the country in every field that we are expert of. And we have so many experts, not only in Vietnam but around the world.
I'm smiling because it's very in line with what we try to build with the overseas Vietnamese community. In those 5-6 million diaspora, we try to mobilize them, we try to connect them, and also open up the door to Vietnam. And I would love to talk more about this, but maybe very quickly about your own overseas Vietnamese story, your own return after '86. Can you talk us through what happened then?
Yeah, it began very, very naturally when I decided to come back after 90. From 80 to 86, resolution number 6. From 86 to 91, the Vietnamese struggling to develop relationship with the US with no success. Then I was invited to come back to Hanoi to talk directly with the leadership and to be closer to the decision center. So I decided to come back to Hanoi in November 91. What did I do, you see? First thing I do when I come back in 91 was to ask the government to free all the officers and civil servants of the South Vietnamese government still in detention. 16,000 of them were still in detention from 75 to 91. So I asked them, you want to develop a relationship in the world. And these officers have family around the world. And the United States cannot really sit down with you in any discussion if the people who support them are still in jail. Morally, they cannot do that. So you have to free these people in order to have opportunity to talk with the United States, an opportunity to get in touch with the Vietnamese diaspora around the world.
Right.
It was a discussion that didn't take very long. But the officer representing the government was the Vice Minister of Security, Vice Minister of Interior. We make a report to the Politburo, and 20 days later, when I was back in France, he informed me that the Politburo had made a decision to liberate these people. So then the decision, I say, how? You liberate them all, or you still keep some of them because of this or that reason? The decision come back a week later, we liberate everybody,
all of them,
not keeping anybody. So my friend in the U.S. Department of State asked them if they would let them go, if they would let them immigrate to the United States or elsewhere. I asked the question, and the response back, Vietnam will let them go wherever they want. The question back, will they allow their family to go? I asked the question, and the answer back from the wife, from the every side, paterno, materno, if anyone wished to follow them, the government would allow anybody who wished to go to join them. So that the United States, at that time, they voted a budget to welcome Vietnamese diaspora, Vietnam prisoners at that time with their family. And from 91 to 92, they're all out of prison. From 92 to 95, 300,000 members were allowed to expatriate. Most of them went to the United States. And the U.S. had a budget to help them resettle in the U.S. You know that. $500 per person to resettle in the U.S. That is the first thing I did when I got back in 91. Yet the former officer and civil servant of the Vietnam Republic to be liberated. And then what next? The US asked me to help find the MIA. When I came back, there was already a mission of MIA headed by General Vese. Already have an office in Hanoi, but they didn't get very far. So when I came back in November 91, my American friend asked me to come and contact the MIA POW office in Hanoi to see what I can help. You see?
Yeah.
Very interesting. They had very good personnel at that time. I remember a colonel by the name Colonel D. State. He spoke fluently Vietnamese. And we talked about how to progress. And one of the subjects he mentioned was that the DIA has information that in the Army Museum, there is a place in there that keep secret information about the whereabouts of the MIA or the missing action that was shot down or killed in battle and so on. So I am told that there are 5,000 pieces of information in that section of the Army Museum that the MIA mission would like to have access to. So I report back to my Vietnamese side and say that that's what the US would like your help for. The situation is very long, but it ended up with the Vietnamese government allowing an American reporter to scan all the 5,000 pieces of secret information of where the plane was shot down and so on. And all that was sent back to the US, helping the MIA POW find the mission action. It's very interesting because in December 1992, I think, I was invited to this headquarters of the MIA POW in Hanoi for a special occasion. I said, what is that? So the Colonel Donovan said, well, you come and you will see. So I came and there was a phone call from Honolulu by an assistant of President Bush calling the commander of MIA in Vietnam and asked him, you are sure you have the 5,000 pieces of information that you promised? So the colonel said, yes, sir, we have them. So on the other side, you are responsible for that. So the colonel said, yes, sir, they are in the camp. I'm responsible. So with that time, the MIA mission confirmed to President Bush that they have the information to try to locate the missing action. And that time, Bush decided to do the first lifting of the embargo. Partial lifting of the embargo at that time, allowing American enterprise to sign contract with Vietnam, but wait until the total lifting of the embargo to execute. But anyway, that's the first lifting of the embargo by Bush as a result of cooperation between Vietnam and the US to find the missing in action. So that is one thing that I did the first time back in Vietnam. And later there are other things that are very practical. One day, Mr. Kien asked me to come, open up a map of North Vietnam, and show me this is Vietnam in China. The railroad or the road down to Haiphong is 880 kilometers to Haiphong by road. And Vietnam to the east of China, Quảng Đông, Quảng Trị, over the mountain, is maybe 2 or more thousand to go there.
Yeah.
So the shortest route for China, Vietnam, southwest of China being developed then, 91, 92, was to go from Yunnan to Haiphong.
Mm.
And the Prime Minister said, Mr. Bùi, help us develop the Haiphong port. I want you to find an American group, a powerful American group, to come in to develop Haiphong port, to plant a big American flag in Haiphong in order to deter China threat, but yet opening the port for China opportunity to access to the sea from Yunnan. That is the subject of the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Fate was that I was then senior advisor to AIG in Vietnam. And the chairman of AIG in Vietnam was called Maurice Greenberg in New York. Joined the company in 1960 and I was with the company in 1959. I was 1 year senior than him as AIG leader. And anyway, he named me resident senior advisor for AIG in Vietnam. So I came back to him with the file from Private Robert Kien and showing to him, look, Vietnam would like to invite you to invest, to develop the port in Haiphong. This is 1,000 hectares of land, for at least for 50 years. The lease term is really very, very light.
Yeah.
So you invest to develop the port in Haiphong. You are the first investor in Vietnam. And whatever Vietnam has to offer in as far as privilege for foreign investor, you will get it. So we did discuss very long. After about more than 15 minutes, less than half an hour, Greenberg shook hands with me and said, Mr. Bùi, okay, we'll do it. That is an investment of $500 million in 93. The biggest investment for any American group at that time, anywhere in Southeast Asia. And that opened up the opportunity, and group like Sumitomo and other group came in later on to sign out the investment project in North Vietnam. And that's how the economy of North Vietnam got a shot in the arm to grow. You see? That is something that is opportunity for me, because I was a leader of the AIG group. I have history of success with the group.
Yep.
And that I have the opportunity to work with the top leadership of the top financial service insurance group. So all these things combined, like fate,
Yes.
to make it happen. So that is one story. The other story is also very interesting. One day I was invited by Prime Minister Robert Kien again. He said, Thanh, we have a big problem. I said, what kind of problem? An American company, American oil company, signed a contract with China to develop a block of oil on Vietnam continental shelf. So here our sovereignty is at stake. If this American company come in to drill on our continental shelf, how will we react? So I said, well, let's stop them from coming in. So I said, how? How to stop them from coming in? Why we have very poor relation with China, no relation with the United States, subject to the embargo. How do you stop American company coming in? Why they have a contract with China? You see? So after about a few years of discussion, we agree on the line of action. We said that we have to use international law for this. We have to demonstrate that this area is under the sovereignty of Vietnam.
Yeah.
If we can demonstrate that, we would have the opportunity to talk to the American side that your company is trying to violate international law, siding with China. That cannot happen. And if anything hot happens in the Pacific, this is 50% of the international maritime route. And the safe and fleet is responsible for maintaining the peace here. How do we deal with this if certainly the Chinese and the Vietnamese Navy shot at each other? So we have to prevent this from happening. The story is very long, but we find a solution for that. So Prime Minister Bùi Kiến said, Mr. Thanh, please help how you contact the US to get this thing stopped.
Yeah.
So we designed a strategy for that. I say number one, we have to decide to hire an American law firm to study the foundation of international law and the foundation of Vietnamese claim of sovereignty on the continental shelf. We must hire an American law firm, not any law firm. Okay? And then what we do, I will go to the State Department to present the situation and to ask American support to help us hire an American firm. So the strategy has been drawn, and how we develop that. Prime Minister Kien instruct the Foreign Ministry to write a letter to whom it may concern and gave it to me to bring to the State Department. What did it say? It said that the Vietnamese government wishes to assist the American government to find American missing in action. And we cannot do that. Now we would like to be able to assist on that without asking for any counterpart. So I went with that letter to see my contact at the Department of State, show it to them, and they read it, they're surprised, but say this is a very positive. The Vietnamese government is willing to assist the American government to find missing in action without any reciprocity, without any condition. But then you know the rule diplomacy, that always something to return, right? When you visit somebody to bring a gift, normally you would receive a gift back. That is the rule of diplomacy. So with that, the State Department officer asked me, Mr. Bùi, very much appreciate this gesture from the Vietnamese government, but then what can we do for you? That opened the whole field. What can we do for you? Well, I explained to them the situation, that there is an American oil company signing contract with China to develop, explore an oil block on Vietnamese sovereignty, and we need to defend, Vietnam needs to defend itself with international law, and Vietnam would like to hire an American law firm to make an in-depth study of Vietnam's root of legitimacy about the claim for sovereignty on the continental shelf. We want to hire an American number one in the world to do this study. So my host at the detachment said, look at me, sure, we would support that, but what can we do for you? I said, the Vietnamese government want to hire an American law firm with them, cannot do that, because it's under the embargo. So what can we do is that the American lift the embargo for the Vietnamese to hire that American law firm. So they look at each other and they cut back to me saying, Mr. Wu, we fully support you, but we have no power. The State Department has no power to lift the embargo. So I asked them, who has the power to lift the embargo? And they say, only the president has the power to lift the embargo. I said, well, then you should report to the president, because that is where the decision should be made. Mm-hmm. They look at each other and they asked me, Mr. Bùi, how long will you be in Washington? That day was a Tuesday. So I told them I won't be until Friday. So they say, okay, we'll get back to you. Thursday they called. I say, Mr. Bùi, we have good news for you. The president agreed. Mm-hmm. I was amazed, short of breath. So I think that, thank you so much. How do we proceed? So we set up a meeting where I came back to the State Department to talk about the detail. Yeah. I say, now that the president decided, how do we implement this decision? They gave me some advice, finally boiling down to us picking an American law firm, and that American law firm would apply for a lifting of the embargo for them to execute the contract, and the president would approve that. It's not something for Vietnam, but for the American law firm. So I asked now, please help me. What law firm do you suggest? They shake their head, no, Mr. Wu, we can't do that, because that was unfair with other law firms. I said, no, I don't ask you to help me fix one. Give me a list of the law firm that you think they have the capacity to do that, and we will examine their credential. So finally they gave me 7 names. I brought the 7 names back to Hanoi, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs picked out 3 names. And we wrote invitation to invite those 3 law firms to Hanoi for interview. They came for 1-day interview, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs picked one, Covington and Berkeley, the top law firm in Washington, D.C., with a lot of experience working not only in international law, but relations with the Congress and so on. So Vietnam signed a contract with Covington and Berkeley in Hanoi, gave them the mission to study the basis of international law for Vietnam's sovereignty on the continental shelf, and especially on the Paracel and the Spratly archipelago. That was in 1993. Yeah. It took them 2 years to study. And in May 1995, they made a report to the government of Vietnam on that, with all the international documentation, historical proof of Vietnam's sovereignty. And in July 1995 was the normalization of relations. So the government of Vietnam waited until after the normalization to instruct Governor Berlin to go to the next step. And the next step was the publication of that report on the International Law Gazette. This is not any country law. This International Law Gazette does not belong to any country, but is a powerful legal source for the whole world. Yeah. So Vietnam established its sovereignty that way, and after that, the American oil competitors withdrew. The United States government actually informed them very strictly that the United States cannot defend any firm that operate on territory that are in conflict of sovereignty. So by that, the company withdrew, and since then no other American company have any contract with China to develop on the continental shelf of Vietnam. And that's how Vietnam reaffirmed its sovereignty on the continental shelf today in the face of China, because China has no legal basis to back any claim. Very interesting, some of my contacts in the various ministries who went to meet in international forum concerning security in Southeast Asia, and they met with their counterpart in China, and the Chinese people just shake hands with them and say, we are very surprised that you did this and whether we did not do it. And many other countries in Southeast Asia feel very happy and comfortable that Vietnam did such thing that China could very well do, but they did not do it. You see so many other stories like that which I help very discreetly the government of Vietnam. Now I'm involved in the development of the International Financial Center. That may take maybe another 50 years to get really fully developed. We will have to get started.
Yes.
And I am getting back again on the Van Phong Port City project. That was decided in 2006, 20 years ago, but it remained there with nothing being done. I will have to get back to that too. Discreetly, I am not making any noise, but I have a good relationship during my work in New York, during my work in Wall Street, during my work elsewhere, personal and professional relationship with a very influential community and people, especially the Jewish community in New York City.
I think you're operating discreetly, exactly. So I guess a lot of the diaspora actually don't know of you, really. I didn't know. And I'm very glad we got introduced, and I think the initial project we talked through was the IFC in Saigon. And I'm very glad we got connected because, as you said, it will take a lot of time. It's a very interesting time now for Vietnam, and then the next generation will need to continue what we have started. I would love to hear more about what you think the role of the diaspora can be for Vietnam and your views on Vietnam's future as well. Very quickly though, to kind of learn about your life and wrap that up. We've talked through the 20th century all the way when you supported the Đổi Mới, when you supported normalization. What then in 21st century? You've settled in Vietnam, you've moved back all the way. What in the last 26 years, how did you see Vietnam? How proud are you of the progress? And, do you think everything is moving in the right direction?
I'm very happy with the progress. It's not maybe what many people expected, but Vietnam is making progress.
Right.
At what speed? Well, we cannot really go back to history and say that we should push it more.
Yes.
But I'm very happy today that we are where we are. And we need to look in the future and work for the future. And the future in Vietnam, I can share with you, is very, very huge, the position of Vietnam in the world.
Yeah.
And Vietnam has a good diplomacy to be friend with all and enemy to none that will help us develop. So I hope that the newer generation, your generation, will pick up the work and carry on to success. There is no reason why we cannot achieve more than we have already achieved. And I really strongly believe that in the next 50 years, Vietnam will be a major player, not only in Asia, but in the whole world.
We've talked through the favoring factors leading up to the growth and rise of Vietnam. What do you think is required of the people and of the diaspora for this to happen?
Well, Vietnam now have a very good labor force and a very good intellectual community. I'm very happy to see kids of 18, 19-year-old in a cafe like this, checking into IT, AI,
right,
and talk to each other in language that we never knew before. And that is a sign of very, very interesting and exceptional project. Not many countries are in that position. It's a free country for intellectual development, you see. And our kids are very good at that. Our kids are welcome around the world. When I see the result of scholarship application this year, for instance, with American University, I'm delighted to see how many of our kids are admitted to the leading school with full scholarship for 4 years. You see? And how Vietnam engineers are invited to work, not only in Asia, but all the way into India and all the way to Silicon Valley.
Yes.
So you see how the world is open to us and how our youth today is really grown up to that challenge. So I think that we're on the right track. And I hope to live another 20 years at least to see progress. But I think 20 years from now, you will see a completely different Vietnam. Yeah.
What do you think are some challenges or things that could...
Certainly there are challenges.
Yeah.
But the challenge for private people like us, challenge for the government authority, and I'm happy that the newer generation of leadership has grown very well into the resolution number 6 to be really shaping the destiny of Vietnam through intervening into the whole world.
Yeah.
Dân chủ, công bằng, văn minh, to get integrated into the civilized world.
Yeah.
I think that is happening and happening very well. And with that, Vietnam will really grow. And I expect Vietnam 20 years from now will grow much higher than even Japan. Japan will grow with 1 or 2% a year. Vietnam will grow at least 5, 6, 7, 8%. You will see.
Yeah, and we hope you will be around to to witness all that change. And I think we're right in the middle of it. The pace of change is fascinating now, and I think it has been for the last 2 or 3 decades.
Yeah. We can really talk into detail some of the things that are in preparation, not made today, but we have an opportunity to go into each case where Vietnam is strong as a player in the world. Where are Vietnam's strong point and Vietnam's potential to be one of the top leader in the future.
If you could talk to the 5 million plus overseas Vietnamese, the diaspora, what message would you tell us?
I think that Vietnam is a country that belongs to all, and certainly to all the diaspora. And what I would like Vietnam to develop is a policy like in Israel. Israel has 10 million Jews around the world and 10 million Jews in Israel.
Yeah.
But the policy for Israel is to recognize any Jew anywhere in the world as citizen of Israel. You don't have to live in Israel. As long as you have a birth certificate showing that your father, your grandfather, your grandmother, whoever are of Israel origin, you are Jew and you are Israel citizen. What does it mean? That means you are free to come back to Israel without any passport, without any visa, because the country belongs to you in the same way that belongs to other Israel in Israel or around the world. I hope to see Vietnam developing in that way. That Vietnam is a country for all Vietnamese anywhere in the world. And every Vietnamese anywhere in the world is Vietnamese with full right and privilege as Vietnamese citizens. We together develop the country and make Vietnam really a real significant power around the world because we are there.
Yeah.
In 103 countries around the world, there are Vietnamese. As long as they are Vietnamese citizens and also citizens of the country where they are located, we work together. So international cooperation between the Vietnamese citizens around the world and within all the countries that they are living in, you can see how Vietnam becomes very important as far as economy or any field is concerned. That's what I hope for. I think that is opportunity, and there's no reason why we cannot do that. It's in our hand.
I agree. Yeah. Very quickly, for young overseas Vietnamese out there, say 20, 25 years, how would you advise them to contribute to Vietnam and get more involved and in touch with the country?
Let them get informed. If they're in the United States, go into library to read about Vietnam. And if they are back in Vietnam, go into the countryside to see how the whole people work together. Not stay in the city and be caught up in traffic.
Yes.
But go and see. The sea, the mountain, the cloud, the people, the rice field. You have to see the country in order to really love the country. Tìm hiểu non sông để tăng lòng yêu nước. You have to know the country. And they can do that. They can come back to Vietnam every year, every other years, and go into their native village, visiting far away countries in the hills, in the mountain, to really get immersed into the country, become one with the country and the people.
Final question. At this stage of life, what brings you the greatest sense of fulfillment and happiness?
I'm very happy every day, I don't feel anything that will not make me happy. There's no reason. We have to be happy. You, anybody. See life in a very, very positive way. Forget about whatever that make you feel sore. Well, life is life. Life is every day the sun go up. Every day there is work to do. Every day that you can do to contribute to your country. Every day you can do to contribute to help your villagers. Well, so beautiful. There is no reason why anybody should feel unhappy. If anything unhappy comes up, you can look at the other happy side.
Yes.
And you will see life in a different light.
Bác Thành, thank you so much. Wonderful closing words, and I hope we stay together to collaborate on this and to see the country rise and do our parts. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll talk again.
Yes.